Hey guys, welcome back. So in this today's session we are going to see about the NAT network address translation. So in the previous class we have explained the so what is the use case of the private address mechanism, so why we using the private address mechanism, as we have only 4 billion unique IP address, but the number of device in the entire world is which is much greater than the 4 billion. So it means that each device will be identified unique identification number, that is what we called as the unique IP number. Now after implementing the private address, what will be happen, if you have the multiple organization, each organization can able to use the same private IP address ranges. Suppose for example this is one organization, right? So for effectively utilizing the addressing concept, we are having the private address. Let it be some organization 1. So here I am going to use the private IP address concept, right? So as we know that private IP address which can be used only within the your local area network, right? So and it is the freely anybody can use this something private IP address range. But see that for example your requirement is something that by using private IP address 1 from this system to this system, if you want to communicate, you can happily communicate because it is the your local area network. Suppose for example you want to get some information from the internet, right? So if you want to get some information from the internet, suppose your IP address is something 192 dot something 168.1.1. so this is what we called as the private IP address. So first it will go to the switch, then it will go to the router, or it may be some other mechanism or firewall. So the moment when packet reaches to here, it will not forward your packet to the internet. Reason is that there is no significance of the private IP address, right? So private IP address cannot be routed to the internet. It means that you cannot able to get the information from the internet, right? Now see that for we have the less number of the IP address, so we have invented something called as the private IP address concept. By using that I can able to communicate within my network, but the moment if I want to access from the internet, this is not allowed to access the internet. So for that what they have implemented is something called as the network address translation. So what is the meaning of network address translation? Means which will convert your private IP address to the public IP address, right? So global IP is nothing but the public IP, local IP is nothing but the private IP address. What is the meaning of this one is, you are going from here to here with your private IP address. Now see that the moment when it is going to the ISP router, what will be happen means it will translate your private IP address into the public IP address. By using this public IP address, we can happily communicate through the internet. Once it is completed, again the information will get back to the router or maybe firewall. So here what will be happen means, again the public IP address will be converted into the private IP address, so the packet will be reached to the private network. So this is how the process of the conversion will be done. That is what we called as the network address translation, right? So NAT generally operates on what? At router or firewall. Now what are the different types of the NATing operation we are going to see now. The first one is the static NAT. So what is the meaning of the static network address translation? Means a single private IP address is mapped with the single IP address. So now if you have one private IP address something, this will be mapped with what? Single public IP address, right? So see that a private IP address is translated to the public IP address. So by using of the static NATing concept, the private IP address is going to be translated in terms of the IP address. Now you might be having the question, so why here I have the one private IP address, here also I have the one public IP address. Now why I should use the private IP address? Directly I can use the public IP address, right? So in which case we are going to use this kind of static NAT mechanism means, suppose here you will be having the server, some computer or whatever it may be. So you are hosting some application, some web application you are hosting here. It means that if whenever the user comes from the outside of the world, if you want to access, there is no way to access your server by using the private IP address, right? So private IP address cannot be used by the globally. So when end user comes to your something, if you want to access, you are hosting the web application. Now if you want to access means he requires something called as the public IP. So in this case, for this server mission, we are going to give something called as the public IP. So in this kind of situation, we are going to use the static NAT. It is nothing but the one-to-one mapping. right? So now another time of the second advanced version is the dynamic network address translator. So what is the meaning of dynamic network address translator? Means multiple private IP addresses are mapped to pool of the public IP addresses, right? So see that it used when we know the number of fixed users who want to access the internet in a given point of the time. So what is the meaning of this one? For example, here we have the translation, right, from private IP address to public IP address, right? Let it be I have the pool of IP address, nothing but some IP address. One is 200 dot something, another one is 201. Like this we will be having the two IP address, so which we called as the public IP address, just for example, which we called as the public IP address. So now what will be happen means, suppose this guy is operated with all these operated with the private IP address, right? Now what I'm going to do is, so out of my company I have the 4 system, but if at a time 4 systems are going to access the internet, it is not possible. We can able to perform the mapping for only 2 public IP address at a time. Now what we used to do means, suppose these 2 guys are requesting for the internet, then what we will do is, we will map this private IP address into the public, we will map this private IP address into the public, right? So later on these people after accessing the internet, what will be happen, if for example they don't require the any internet, now for example this guy want to access the internet means, again this private IP address will be mapped into the public IP address. It means that by purchasing some public IP address, whichever the mission we want, we can map to that. So remember that if you have the 2 public means, you cannot be able to map with the 4 systems, right? So at a time you can able to map with only 2, right? So this is what we called as the dynamic NAT. So if you observe here, what is the problem here is that if all 4 systems want to communicate with the internet, it is not possible, because here we have only something like this 2 public IP address. So in order to overcome issue, they have implemented one more networking address translation protocol. So that is what we called as the port address translation, right? So in the TCP IP layer, we have discussed something called as the port address, right? For each system, we will be having the 14 to 16 bit length, right? Each system will be having the 2 power 16 port. It is nothing but the 5035 ports. It means that when you want to communicate from one system to the another system, by using of the IP address, we can able to find out where is the first PC as well as the PC2 is located. But if you want to communicate inside of each PC, there are multiple processes are running, right? So something, it may be YouTube, it may be Facebook, it may be Yahoo, something it may be Instagram, some web application or whatever it may be. So if you want to communicate one process with the another process, now what we required is, we required something called as the identification mechanism. That identification mechanism we are using as the port addressing concept. Now see that for one system how many ports I can use, 65,535 ports we have, right? It means that when you are communicating from, suppose for example, if you are communicating from this PC to this PC, we need to mention the what is the port address of the source mission as well as the port address of the destination mission. In the transport layer, we have exactly done this one only, right? Now see that what will be happen means, in previous case we are having the some public IP address, based on that we are performing the mapping operation, right? Now here see that we don't require multiple public IP address to be used, right? One public IP address is much more than sufficient. How it means that, suppose for example, see this is my mission something 172.18.3.1, right? So this mission is something 3.2 something like this. Now see that what is this port number, this will also be having the some port number, right? So out of these port numbers, randomly we can assign any port number, right? By using of the OS software, port number will be assigned randomly, source port numbers, remember. So let it be, this is a port number of 1400, this is the port number of the 1401, right? Now where we want to connect something 25.8.3.2, this is our something called as the external address, right? So now what will be happen means, so first packet will go to here by using this port number something, it will go to here by using this one public IP address, it will convert this private IP address into the public IP address. So it will get the packet for you and it will deliver to the port number which is related to 41400 only. Again the same time this mission also can be communicated by using of the single public IP address only. The translation can be done here, this private IP address into the public IP address. See that, but how we can able to differentiate? So after going to this mission using the same public IP, this machine also using the same public IP means, but the moment when it is coming back to the system, it should be identified, right? So how it is going to identify is based on something called as the unique port number of the each system. It means that, so here we will be having the concept something called as the port address translation. So this is also called as the NAT overlaid. See that private, in this many local private IP address can be translated to a single public IP address. How it is possible means, each port number will be uniquely identified, right? So port number are used in the distinguish the traffic, i.e. it means that which traffic belongs to the which IP address. So if it is something, it is some different topic, the port number is something different, it is some different thing like that. So the most frequently used, it is cost effective, and thousands of the user can be connected to the internet by using only, right, so one real global public IP address. See that in previous case we have something, we have purchased the public IP address, we are mapping when our requirements come up. But the moment if you are implementing the port address concept, see that each device will be having the different port number. By using the single IP, we can able to get the traffic, as well as when you are delivering to the particular private machines, it is going to consider the port addressing operation, right? So this is how we are going to convert public IP address using in terms of the private IP address. Once after it is coming back to the particular system, again we are going to translate the public IP address into the private IP address. This is what we called as the network address translation operation. If we don't have any private IP address concept operation, then we don't require something called as the NAT concept, right? I hope you understand. Thank you very much, guys.